How many other things do you have on a one button push kind of scenario?
All the blinds in the house. That was my
Uh-huh.
wife's deal. We bought this house back in 2018, and it needed everything. So before we
Yeah.
moved in, even we replaced all the flooring and the countertops, and then over the last 5 years, we just kind of would do one thing at a time. New front door, epoxy floor of the garage, new cabinets, paint, new blinds. I mean, all that kind of stuff. So we finally have it pretty much dialed in now.
Are you pretty handy around the house? Is that all the stuff that you can do?
No, that would be my wife. She is incredibly handy. As a matter of fact, it's pretty funny because growing up, I mean, I say growing up, but when we were married in the early years, I'd be putting a bike together and I'd be like, son of a bitch. And she'd be like, hey, just let me do it. And so from that time on, she's done everything. I came home one time and she had the washing machine torn apart and she was looking at a YouTube video trying to replace like the motor in the washing machine. She's refaced our cabinets 3 different times in different houses, and she's she's pretty amazing.
Oh,
Well, I didn't have a dad that did any of those things. And so a lot of times people will they will be really good at rebuilding engines, and I'll always say, "So where'd you get that?" And, oh my, I just did it with my dad. My dad was into that, and my dad was into music. So I mean, there you go.
what kind of music was your dad into?
The classical stuff. He was a conductor of choirs, traveled all
Uh-huh.
over the country doing that. He had an ROTC choir that performed back in D.C., and he's always done big choirs, and that's what he loved to do. So he's very much. He and my mom both sang in the Mormon Tabernacle Choir.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's pretty awesome.
yeah. They both had very good voices, and so when we had music that he had, it was more classical stuff, Beethoven and different things. Maybe some big band, but I mean, he liked orchestra music.
And what about you? Your taste in music and your experience in music has been long running itself.
Oh yeah, yeah. So mine is all classic rock, pretty much entirely. I've gotten a little bit into over the last probably 10 or 15 years, a little bit more what I would call country rock. So like Zach Brown Band or Kenny Chesney, or I guess it started with Jimmy Buffett. I've liked him for many many years, and then it just kind of he started doing songs with some of those other guys, and I kind of got into their music a little bit too.
Oh, yeah. Did you ever listen to Marshall Tucker Band?
Sure, Fire on the Mountain.
Yeah. They were a good kind of crossover between rock and country, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, 38 Special, Leonard Skinner. I mean, there's lots of those kind of bands that Molly Hatchet that played that kind of what I would call Southern rock or whatever. But yeah, I liked all that stuff. I mean, I certainly didn't just stick to one genre. I think my classic rock is quite expansive. Been to about 180 concerts. I know you've been to a lot more, just from our conversations. But
And I
I've
still
seen
have most of
everybody
my
from
brain cells.
yeah, and I've seen everybody from Michael Jackson to Led Zeppelin. So
Oh, speaking of Zeppelin, they're coming out with a documentary on them real soon. Did you read about that?
I heard it on Sirius XM. I was listening to Classic Rewind, and they were talking about it. Yeah,
Yeah, so I
should be
think it's going
fun.
to be more focusing on their early days.
Yeah, which would be great.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. They
I
were
saw him in
probably my favorite.
1975 down in San Diego.
Right, right, right. Oh yeah, I think I one week back around that time I saw Zeppelin 2 nights in a row. On the third night I saw Blue Oyster Cult, and then on the fourth night I saw another Zeppelin.
There you go.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. So Larry, when I was looking through your bio, I saw that there's a lot of religious undertones, perhaps overtones. You grew up in a Mormon family, and a lot of stuff related to Mormonism. Now, we don't normally speak about religion on this show, but it's so overwhelming in your bio that I thought we should actually touch on it and find out about what it was like growing up Mormon in Southern California and how that shaped your future.
Yeah. Well, I've been on probably 12 or 14 different podcasts, and it almost always comes to that because it's not like you're one of these go on Easter and Christmas type of religions. It's high demand and very much so. And I even took 2 years out of my life and did it knocking on doors for 2 years. So, I mean, it was a big part of my life until our daughter actually is the one who told us a couple things to look into, and we did, and out. But that's only been 8 years ago.
Oh, wow. Is there some regret when you look back on your upbringing and spending those 2 years knocking on doors?
I have friends that are very angry and regretful and just felt like they had 2 years stolen. And I don't feel that way because I kind of look at it more like I had a great upbringing. We are the religion of our parents. And, my parents were Mormon. And so the 2 years, I just kind of look at it like somebody would who maybe joined the Air Force for 2 years. I mean, it was the first time really away from home. You're forced to kind of grow up and it wasn't pleasant much of the time because there was, I used the term cult, and people don't like that term. So I then I get away by saying just it's a high demand religion. But if there's ever a time that was super culty, it was that 2 year mission, because they had rules that you couldn't even believe. You had to be up by 6:30, you had to be in bed by 10 o'clock. You had to do 2 hours of Bible study every morning. You could never talk to a girl. You could not go to movies. You couldn't listen to music. You couldn't read newspapers. You couldn't watch television. You could do nothing for 2 years. You were assigned a companion, and they switched them out maybe every couple of months. But, if you got somebody that you had nothing in common with other than your religion, it was hard. It was very difficult because you're with them all the time.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of tough parts about that experience that I look back. But again, I think it helped me with public speaking. It helped me with, being able to meet somebody and not be too shy or anything, because, you might be that way at the beginning of your 2 year mission, but trust me, by the time you're at the end, you're not that way anymore.
In your first marriage, was the lady that you were married to assigned to you? Is that how that worked?
Oh, no. Well, we weren't. So the religion was very, I guess in many ways, very normal in terms of we didn't have a lot of the other strange religions in general are kind of weird, I think. And I should say that I'm not religious at this point at all. I'm a hopeful agnostic. So, I have a son who passed away. I lost my parents. I lost a brother. So I'm hopeful that I will see these folks again. But I don't know. And anybody that tells me they do, I just smile and say, well, hey, great. If it makes you feel better, then good for you. I mean, because I do think there's some good things that come from religion, as long as it doesn't, get you to look down or try and take out your anger on other people who don't agree with you. So if it's that, if they're telling me to fly a plane into a building, I got a problem with that. So,
right.
But if it's just, hey, be kind to people, do good things, then I'm all for that. So.
Right, but we don't need religion for the being kind to people thing, or being loving to your community and all the things. Being religious doesn't make you go to heaven, does it?
No, and as a matter of fact, there's I think I told you about 6-7 years ago I wrote a book, and in that book I have a quote that I put in there, and I should look at it more often, but I'll just basically tell you what it says. It quotes this guy. He's a French philosopher, and he said, you know what? I would rather live my life, be a good person, believing in God, and die and find out there isn't, than live my life as a not nice person and then die and find out there is. So I kind of follow that. I think that it's, we should be good. We should be kind. We should hold the door open for, an elderly person. Whatever that the things that we were taught in our youth. We're a different generation than a lot of the young people today, but I think there's nothing wrong with being kind, and you're right. You don't need a religion for that. I just think that that's just basic niceties that unfortunately seems to be lacking in a lot of people these days.
Do you think that there are people who take advantage of, I won't name any religion names, but people take advantage of maybe, like, if their actions are those of someone who we despise, that they could just get away with it by saying, 10 Hail Marys or whatever it might be. It's like that makes everything okay.
Well, I've thought about that many times because, wow, what a convenient religion. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's like a get out of jail free card.
Yeah. No. The religion I was brought up in had some very, very strict rules on stuff like that. As a matter of fact, it's kind of interesting because in the state of Utah, they have the highest, on a percentage basis, cases of what I would call almost like white-collar fraud, or people get involved in like Ponzi schemes and multi-level marketing schemes. But if you think about it, the religion itself is kind of a multi-level thing, because you were told, here's a list of rules, and there's quite a few of them, but if you follow all these rules, then you will make it to the celestial kingdom where you can live together as a family and have eternal life. And they even teach that you can continue to have children, and of course you can have many wives and all these things. Sounds like a great deal for a man. Not so sure how I would feel if I was a woman, but a lot of the women
was
buy into
invented
that.
by men.
Oh, of course. And but if you don't make it, let's say you slip up a little bit, maybe you're not always truthful, or really you don't pay enough money, because they want 10% of your income too. So if you don't pay that, then you're going to go to the next kingdom, and that's the terrestrial kingdom. And if you're a real shitbird, you're Adolf Hitler or something, then you're going to the telestial kingdom. So it is kind of a multi-level marketing thing, even when it comes to what's going to happen after this life. So, but yeah, I believed in it because, I'm looking at my parents when I'm a little boy growing up, and, you believe your parents, right? So you just go along with it. And one of the beautiful teachings they have, is so smart when you think about it, is, hey, if you're really a good member of the faith, you won't even look at any materials that aren't published by the church. So we have our own bookstores. So if you want to read a book or something, then you get it from our bookstores. And if you ever have somebody that starts telling you things that go against what you've been taught, then you don't want to listen to that. That's anti-Mormon, and you shouldn't listen to that. And for the most part, I followed that part of it. I really didn't seek things out or look at things, or if somebody would tell me something, I'd be like, okay, well, hey, thanks. That's your opinion. That's great. And I just go about my life because things were pretty normal. As I mentioned, I could do music. I could, date girls. There was nothing weird that side of it. I could play sports. I could do what I wanted to do. But they did have some things, and one of them was when you turn 19. It's 18 now, but when I was growing up, you were to serve a 2-year mission, and you had no say in where you were going. They just told you where you were going. I had a brother that went to England. I had a sister that went to Italy. I went to Arizona and New Mexico. Now, let me tell you how excited I was when I got that letter.
Not as exciting as Italy or England.
No, not at all. But yeah, that was pretty tough. And you pay your way. So it's kind of weird. You're out there paying your own way, recruiting for them. Because you remember, this is a huge corporation. If you look at the title of the Mormon Church, it's actually called the Corporation of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a corporation, and it's worth $250 billion now and up. That's probably a low estimate. But they, you think about it, they get 10% of all the faithful members that pay it. And they have these temples all over the world, and you can't even go into one if you don't pay the 10%. That's one of the requirements. So they take that money, they invest that money, and they do very well.
That's a really lousy thing that the religions do, is that they require money and they pass the hat and whatever it might be. It takes away from all of their beliefs that they say, being a good person and all that. It's like, if you were a good person, you felt like giving your money, you could, but for it to be demanded seems so out of place.
Yeah, well, again, I think a lot of people here are living their lives for the next life. And that's what it's all about. They put up with hardships here. They may not even like their spouse, but they know that in the next life, things will be better. And, I don't do that. I mean, I did that for a long time. I don't do it anymore. I believe that this could very well be our only life, and you should get out of it the most you can and enjoy it. And again, be a good person, but still have fun. And, yeah, that's what I believe. So... Again.
So when did you finally break away from the shackles of Mormonism and get into your place where you're at now?
Sure. Yeah. So where we're at now is, and it's still kind of tied to Mormonism. When we left the faith back in 2016, we had just moved back from Hawaii. I mean, we'd only been back a couple of months. We'd been living on Maui, and we were in Gilbert, Arizona, and we basically in the same neighborhood area that we'd been in before we moved to Maui. So we had a lot of friends there. My wife, her whole world, pretty much, her community was fellow members of the Mormon faith. So when we left, and I think initially she thought things would be okay. Some of her friends told her they'd be okay. This doesn't change anything, but it did. All of a sudden, she wasn't getting invited to certain functions, and she didn't have a lot of friends who weren't Mormon. And so I did. I had a poker group, and I had softball, and I probably had more non-Mormon friends than I had Mormon friends. So it wasn't a big deal for me at all. But after a few months, she said, you know what? I think we need a new start. I think we need to move. And I said, well, as long as it's someplace warm enough I can play softball year-round, I'm fine. So we'd been to St. George, Utah. I played softball tournaments here over the years, and so we knew the area. The one weird thing was we also knew it was Utah, and there's a lot of Mormons there. So could we go and live in a place where there's lots of Mormons now that we're not Mormon anymore? And so that's the first thing I asked my real estate agent here, and he said, oh, yeah, you can now. 15 years ago, I probably told you no, but now it's so many people are moving here from all over. And so, yeah, we moved here in 2018. It took us a little while, between different things, but we got here in 2018. And so really, the reason we came here was based on really because my wife just felt like we needed a change and a new environment. And so we're here and we're loving it. It's a great place if you like to hike and bike and do a lot of outdoor activities, pickleball, softball. So walking, beautiful red mountains everywhere. We're close to a couple of national parks. And it's really not far. It's 4 hours from Salt Lake, 6.5 hours from Phoenix, 6 hours from Los Angeles, so it's a good location for us.
Why did you go back to Utah? That's where you're at now, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there has to be some.
Really.
So you're saying that it's not about religion or about the ties that were never released from that to be able to go back to that, because there are a lot of places that are pretty and nice and warm and allow you to do all the things that you just mentioned, such as Arizona, New Mexico, or Texas. I mean, there's so many places that maybe even are a little bit more progressive than Utah with all of its kind of Mormonism stuff that's floating around. Why did you go back there?
Really, just because of the location. It hit everything. It checked all the boxes in terms of things that we like to do. We're 2 hours, hour 45 from Las Vegas. So if we want to go to a concert, I ran down and saw the Red Hot Chili Peppers. We'll go down and do things. We're not that far away. And really, yeah, there's religions all over. If you live in Boston, there's a lot of Catholics around. We were just in New York. I just went sitting in JFK, and I've never seen so many Jewish people in my life. And so you find different segments of the country and, of course, the world where there's heavily populated with different religions. And that's fine as long as they are okay and accepting of people who aren't part of their religion. And so that was the question I had when I asked that real estate agent. Can we live here and get along and be okay? And it's so funny because everybody on my street, I live in a cul-de-sac, and none of them have ever been Mormon. These people over here moved from Georgia. These people moved from New Mexico. These people over here moved from Wyoming. These people from California. So there are plenty of Mormons around, naturally, because I think it's like 60% Mormon in the state of Utah. But
right.
It's, over time it's getting less and less. Gosh, 30 years, 40 years ago, it was probably 85%. So,
that has also affected dialects and accents, the fact that people are so mobile these days that you don't necessarily have that southern drawl for the southern states or the New York accent, because people are so mobile that they're moving around, and so the language that is associated with those places is fading away. So soon we're all going to sound the same and look the same, it appears.
Very possible, for sure, because a lot of us have been pretty mobile. I've moved a lot of times, but I still run into people who have I've lived here all my life, and I'm like, wow. But again, just different stories. But you asked me early about how it was growing up in Southern California, and I'll tell you this: when you're a kid, you don't really think about it. It's not like I meet some kid on the playground and go, "What religion are you?"
Right.
Never even came up in a conversation, So it wasn't until I was probably like junior high. I was living in San Diego, and I was like, "Man, there's not very many Mormons. There's like 5 of us, I think, in the whole school." And but it was all right. Nobody really cared. It was more about what band were you into, or what sports do you like, or So it was fine. I had no issues growing up at all.
What was the Hawaii connection? When did you move there? How long did you live there?
Oh man, I tell you, the connection for me started when I was like 5 years old, and I can very much remember how it started. I would be at my grandmother's house. We'd be watching shows like The Match Game, Truth or Consequences, whatever. But they would give away a prize. Let's make a deal. Monty Hall at the end. You won a trip to Hawaii, and they would show like the palm trees and the hula girls dancing. And I just remember looking at my grandma going, "Someday I'm going to live there." She'd like pat my head. "Oh yeah, that's nice." I mean, she'd never even been on an airplane, So, but I just always had a love for it, and I just, people have always asked me that, like, "Why are you so into Hawaii?" But because it didn't come from my parents, they'd never been to Hawaii. I mean, it was just something I was just always enamored with, and I loved the ocean. And when I was about 11 years old, 10 or 11, we moved to Laguna Beach, California. And so that was my first beach experience, and going to the beach a lot. And then we moved to San Diego, and so I was fortunate to be around the ocean. And then at 15, oh no, gosh, I guess I was 18. Finally went to Hawaii for the first time. Spent a month on the North Shore over there in Laie area, by Kahuku, and so we would just jump in a van and go over to Haleiwa and get a shave ice at Matsumoto's, and I just fell in love with the place. It was everything I thought it would be and even more. So, yeah, that's how it started for me. And then I've loved the music. When I was there for that month, I turned 19, as a matter of fact, in Hawaii. And, some locals there, kind of turned us on to Cecilio and Capono and Kalapana, and just some of the Peter Moon Band, Olamana, just different bands that were kind of popular at the time, and really got into it and just have really enjoyed it, and had a chance over the years now to meet some of those musical artists, and it's really been fun. Yeah, just loved it.
And at what year did you move to Hawaii?
So I was going to school on North Shore, Oahu in 1980, and while I was there, my dad and some of his partners ended up buying a big house on Hukilau Beach. It was a big house. It could like sleep 20 people, and it was right on the beach. You could throw a rock, if you had a pretty good arm, from the lanai into the ocean. So my brother and I would actually ferry people from the airport in Honolulu out there to the home, and every 2 weeks we would take them back to the airport, hang around Ala Moana Shopping Center or something for 4 or 5 hours, and then wait for the next load to come in and then drive them back. And we did that every couple of weeks. And during that time, again, it just kind of cemented my desire, to live there. And but of course couldn't do it. I had other things. I was still in college, and it took me all the way. Well, I should say that my dad's company ended up with that house, and we ended up as a family having a month, so 4 weeks every other year. And so for all those years, from 1980 forward, I would go for like 4 weeks. Sometimes I could only go for 2, because of work and different things. But pretty much every time, and then my father-in-law bought into it when my dad decided he was done with it. And so he had it all the way till 2003. So all those years, my kids have grown up going to Hawaii every 2 years for a month. And in 2002, we bought our own place on Maui. And we had that for 14 years.
Oh, wow. Now, I'm guessing when you were going to school on Oahu, you were going to BYU.
Yep.
Okay, so the Mormon thing continues everywhere you move or go to.
It's true, yeah. So they had a campus there out in Laie, and so I just transferred from Provo over to Laie because I had just gotten divorced. I married my high school sweetheart, if you will. I met her when I was 14 years old. So people are like, "Wow, you didn't wait very long to get married. You got married at 21." I go, "Well, I waited 7 years, and in my high demand religion, you could not have sex until you were married. They really made a big deal out of that. So." There was some incentive to get married. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, how long were you here in Hawaii?
So at that time, I was only there 6 months, and then I transferred back because I pretty much had run out of the classes I could take. At that point, I needed to kind of focus on my major, which was broadcast communications. And one of the reasons I went to BYU, other than it was a church school and the tuition was fairly low, is they had their own television station, KBYU. They still have it. As a matter of fact, I could turn it on right now, and it's on. There is a PBS station or whatever. But they had every night at 6:30 they had the weeknight news, and so it gave you practical experience doing television. And so I wanted to go into sports, and so back then what you would do is you would record, you just put a tape in, they would record the show, and then you could edit out your section, and that's how you got a job. You would send that audition tape to different TV stations, and so eventually I got a job at KITV Channel 12 in Farmington, New Mexico.
Wow. KITV was also a station here in Honolulu,
I'm sorry.
right?
Yeah. See, that's the age coming through. KIVA
Okay, gotcha.
Channel 12. Sorry about that.
There we go. Okay, it was just like, I go, wait, I can't imagine there being two stations with the same call letters.
Isn't that funny? And of all the stations, I picked the Hawaii one. Isn't that funny?
Right, of course. Because that's the only one I would be able to respond to, right?
Yeah, I could have said KHON.
Right, exactly. Now, Larry, you are a big sports fan. You were doing sports announcing for a while?
I did some of that, but really I wanted to be, honestly, I wanted to be a play-by-play announcer. That's what I wanted to be. I did some in college, did some of the baseball games, a little bit of football stuff, a little bit of basketball stuff, but I just could not break in. So the next thing was I was just the anchor doing the, on TV. If you turned on the news at 6 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, I was the guy doing sports. And,
okay.
And I did that for really less than a year because our TV station got sold, and they kept me on, but they wanted me to be what they call the Northern New Mexico Bureau Chief. And so like at 7:25, 8:25 in the morning, and then at 55 on the hour. So you have like this 5-minute little segment where you would come on and say, well, this is what's going on in Northern New Mexico. And, I'd have to cover like city council meetings and go out on the Indian reservation to, Window Rock or Ship Rock and cover stories. And it's like, this isn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to do sports, So
right.
Yeah,
you ever
I got
just,
out of there as soon as I could get another job, I left.
I bet. You ever just, when you're hanging out with your wife, is it Judy?
Yeah.
Do you ever just turn off the volume of the TV and do a little play-by-play right there?
Well, I do turn off the volume, but I don't do any play-by-play. I do get tired sometimes of the guys on there. It's I think it's like anything. Once you've kind of been in the business, you see things differently.
Yeah. What is your favorite sport, by the way?
Baseball, softball. Yeah, that's what I grew up playing. I played all the sports, but I didn't play any of them very seriously or for very long other than baseball when I was growing up. I played baseball on and off until 2005. So, gosh, I was pretty old because I probably don't look older than 67, but I'm 68.
Fantastic. What is your position?
I played the shortstop and third base for many years. I play on the infield. So it's still a lot of fun. We have our first tournament coming up next month, and we have a tournament every month. We're going to play in Vegas twice this year, Aurora, Colorado, Reno, Nevada, Salt Lake City, Pine Top, Arizona. So we're mostly areas we can drive to within, one day.
Oh, that's very cool. And so is this an age-related organization or league?
It is. So it's part of senior softball. That's about 40,000 members. They start at age 40. So I have a son who's 41. So technically, I laugh at him and joke. I say, "You're senior now."
He can play alongside you.
Yeah. They have divisions, and that's the thing. So every 5 years, you're eligible to play in another division. You can always play younger. So technically, I could play with him in the 40-year-olds. But that's a totally different game. They're stronger, faster, throw harder. As we get older, you're just not as fast as you once were. You don't hit as hard.
Right.
You don't throw as hard. But it's still, you'd be amazed at the how competitive it is. And we actually won our division back in 22 and got invited to a big tournament of winners back in Florida, and we ended up winning that too. So that was a lot of fun. We've done some fun things.
What kind of average do you hit for?
Oh, it's softball, so slow pitch. So, guys,
Right.
if you're not hitting probably at least 600, then you're probably not playing on a serious travel team. So, yeah, good hitters will hit probably north of 750. You can hit 800, 850. Yeah.
Wow. Now, Larry, we're coming up in 39 days to the opening of 2025 MLB. Who do you root for? Who's your team?
Sad to say, it's the California/Los Angeles Angels. And I say sad to say because they've had just such a history of being such a mediocre team. But that's the team my grandfather got me into when I was like 4 or 5 years old. So I stick with them. I'm always rooting for them, but usually their season's over by, May.
I think those of us who are baseball fans have a very heavy heart when it comes to the Angels because of Mike Trout, perhaps one of the
Yeah.
most gifted players of all time, never being able to reach the playoffs because he's stuck on the Angels.
Yeah, and if you look at Ernie, it reminds me of Ernie Banks playing for the Cubs because back then you either won the National League pennant or you didn't go to the World Series. I mean, now they have playoffs, right? They have wild card teams and different things, so you have a better chance. But there were guys that played their entire careers and never made it to a World Series. And, gosh, Mike Trout, he's only been in one postseason
Yeah.
in his whole career. And I think it was 2014, and he played like 3 games. And so you're right. It's kind of sad. And even though I love him and I love the Angels, I would like to see him get traded to a place where he can, play postseason ball because I just don't see it happening with the Angels anytime soon.
No, it won't. And yeah, I think a lot of us would love to see him playing for a contender, a true contender.
Yeah, and he's from the Philadelphia area, so if you were to put him on the Phillies with like Bryce Harper, and Trey Turner, some of those guys, I mean that would be a formidable team. I would not like to see him play for the Yankees though, because my favorite team is whoever's playing the Yankees.
And my favorite team is the Yankees. And we could still be friends though, Larry.
Yeah, oh, I got a buddy that's his favorite team too, so I'm always giving each other crap. But of course, he's had it on me. The Yankees were in the World Series last year. The Angels, they were golfing.
Right, right. I wonder if Mike Trout really, really wanted to be traded, if he could affect a change like that.
I think he could. Yeah, I think we live in an era now where if a player doesn't like what's going on in the organization, what's happening, they can demand a trade and get a trade. As a matter of fact, Jimmy Butler, this is basketball now, but he just kind of said, I don't want to play here anymore in Miami or whatever. And it took a couple of weeks, but now he's playing for Golden State. So, yeah, these guys can make moves if they aren't happy.
I suppose that if they're really not happy, then they can just not really put out much effort and kind of betray their teammates by doing that.
They probably could. I don't know. I mean, that might be things that other general managers might see too, and then it's like, why would I want that guy on my team? I mean, so I do think that would be probably not the way I would go. I think I would just tell my agent, look, I don't want to be here anymore. Make it happen, and do it that way. But nowadays they can get traded, and as a matter of fact, you'd be hard pressed to find players today who have been with the same organization for more than 10 years. Mike
Right.
would be one of them, but there's not a lot.
Yeah, that's true. Larry, I'm thinking here, we haven't discussed food at all, so I have to ask you, because it's a big part of my show. What have you eaten today?
Yeah, I was just walking this morning and I was listening to your episode on pizza, and because I love pizza, and so I thought it was so interesting. And I don't remember the gentleman's name that you were interviewing, but you were asking him some questions, and one of them was, I'm going to ask you this question you probably never had been asked before, and you're like, so why do they have a round pizza in a square box and you cut it into like triangles? And I thought that was so interesting because I wondered the same thing, but so I do love pizza. Now today you said, what was the thing I ate? Frosted mini wheats.
Frosted mini wheats.
Yeah,
Wow.
my wife's out of town. She's been gone for 2 weeks with the grandkids, and so when I'm here making meals for myself, it's a lot of cold cereal and peanut butter and honey sandwiches. I'm not much of a cook.
So when the cat's away,
I
you're
actually-
going to get into your...
I actually lose a couple pounds when my wife's gone because I just don't eat very much, and I eat stuff that's very quick. But I
quick
don't
and,
try to
and
eat
satisfying, though.
Yeah. I don't try to. I don't go nuts and get hamburgers and do that kind of stuff because I do have to watch my weight. Because, like I said, I I notice 5 pounds when I'm running the bases. You might not think like that's much, but I can feel the difference. So
Oh, I
I'm
bet. So,
very fortunate that my knees haven't been replaced. My hip haven't. I've never had shoulder
wow.
issues because so many players. I'm probably one of maybe 2 or 3 guys on my entire team of 19 that haven't had at least one replacement of something.
Are there a lot of injuries in the senior softball circuit?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of pulled muscles. I think we have right now on our team, we have one guy that had, so our season usually ends in October. There are tournaments throughout the year, but we don't play in the Novembers and the Decembers and the Januaries. We take those off, and that's when we go on cruises or we do the things we want to do. But so one guy I know has, 2 guys have had shoulder surgery in the off season. One guy had knee surgery, and these are knee was a replacement. But yeah, it's not a hip. One guy had a hip surgery he's just coming back from. So those things happen a lot. If you're still playing when you're 65 plus, there's a lot of luck involved too.
Wow, I bet there is. And I'm thinking, I'm basically your age, and there's no way I could go out there and run and compete against guys.
Yeah, it gets tougher every year, I'll be honest with you. But so
Yeah.
I'm playing in the 65s, and then within the 65s, there's different divisions. You have what they call double A, triple A, major, and each division's a little bit tougher. So we're in the middle one. We're playing triple A, and then once you hit 70, now you're the young guys again, right? So right now I'm in
Oh,
the older side of the 65s, and but we have a really good team. We have a team that's very competitive, and when we're playing together with our full allotment of players, we have a shot at winning every tournament we enter. So doesn't mean we will, because sometimes, you don't have your full allotment. Sometimes guys have other things to do, right? Like high school graduations for a grandchild or something. But
right.
everybody has life beyond softball, and sometimes they're rehabbing injuries, and so they can't play. But when we have like in this March tournament coming up here, it's a big one. We're going to have our whole team together. So I think, last year we took third. So we'll see.
So we're not going to talk about the frosted mini weights at all from this point forward. But I do have to ask you, where did your wife go?
Alabama.
What is she doing there?
She's watching the grandkids.
Okay, so what is that experience like? Not having grandkids myself, what is that like becoming a grandparent?
It's really pretty awesome. We only have 3 grandkids, but when you have children, so there's a difference. When you have grandkids, you can go spend a few days with them, have a lot of fun, do fun things, and then you're gone. And and they love it. We love it. I have a hard time, spending more than about 2 or 3 days, just because. Well, I don't know. I don't feel like I'm selfish, but I understand my father-in-law now. He would come and I'd say, "Hey, why don't you stay longer?" And he's like, "Oh, no, I need to go back to my own place." Right? Now I get it. Now I understand what he was talking about. So it's not that you're there with these little kids, and that's great, but after a few days, that kind of runs its course. But you're also missing all the stuff you do when you're home. Whether it's softball, or he's a big golfer, so he would golf like 2, 3 days a week. So if he's down visiting us, he would try and take me golfing, but that after 1 or 2 of those, he's done with that. So I'm a terrible golfer. So, but yeah, I totally understand it. But having grandkids is awesome. They're just so much fun, and you can certainly see though why you have them when you're young.
Is it a matter of spoiling them when you're with them? Is that kind of what the grandparent's role is in life?
I'm not sure if that's the role, but that's inevitably that's what happens. I mean, we love to do things with them and take them places, and so for them, and there's been a couple different times. So a couple times my daughter, they'll drop them off at our house, and then they'll go to like Kauai or something for a week. That's what they did last year, and so we watched them for a week. So when they're at our house, it's a little different than when we're at their house, which is where Judy is now. Because at their house, they have certain rules and things, but they also have all their toys and things. So there's a little bit of an advantage, I think, to both. They enjoyed it here because we would take them and do things that they don't normally get to do. So, but they're still pretty little.
Yeah, how old are they?
6, 3, and like 7 months.
Oh, okay. So you're not quite at the point yet where you can give grandfatherly advice to them.
No, not at all.
But that'll be coming along soon, so you need to kind of stock up on what you're going to tell them.
Yeah, I'm still working on my own kids. So
How many do you have?
we have 3 kids. We have 2 boys and a girl. Our middle son Dusty passed away in 2018. He had a ruptured iliac artery, kind of just a weird freak thing. I was at a softball tournament in Vegas. Judy was actually in Hawaii. Our first grandchild was being born, and he was in Phoenix, Arizona, and he just grabbed his stomach and collapsed and was gone within an hour. So it was just, and he was in good shape. I mean, he was a surveyor. That's what he did for work, and but it was just a total shock. Yeah. So then our oldest son, so Dusty was the middle child. Our oldest son, Crosby, he's the one that could be playing senior softball. So he's just kind of, still trying to figure himself out at 41. And then our daughter, she's in Alabama, and her husband's in the Coast Guard. And so they move every 3 years.
Wow. That's an exciting way to see the world.
Yeah. They were in Hawaii for 2 tours in a row. So that was kind of nice. They were out there staying in Kaneohe.
Wow, that's a dream come true for people in the service, to be assigned to Hawaii.
Yeah, and they would go back. I mean, he's from Southern California. He loves to surf. So if they got a shot to go back to Hawaii again, they would do it. So, that'd be fine by me, because, by the time we leave here and fly to Alabama, it takes us more time than if we were flying to Honolulu.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on Dusty's passing, but you never get over that, do you?
No, you never do. I got pictures right here sitting next to me of him when he's a little boy, and one of the things that I did, I think it helped me. When you write a book nowadays, most of the time it's print on demand. So if you were to order my book, go to Amazon, order the book, they print it. It's not like it's sitting in some warehouse somewhere. But the beautiful thing is, as an author, you can go back into that book and add a chapter. And that's exactly what I did when Dusty passed. It was about a year later. I waited about a year, and then I wrote a chapter on losing a child. And it was very therapeutic for me. Let me kind of just, tell his story a little bit and talk about, kids and being a father and losing a child. And so, but I also had over 900 pictures that I had kind of archived, and so I put them into a book, because now you can go, there's different companies that do it, but I put together this book on Shutterfly, and then I gave one to each of my children and his grandparents and stuff like that. So, but I look at that every couple of months. I'll sit down and just go through the book and look at the pictures, and I'm so glad I had them. I wish I had more, but I'm certainly glad I had the ones I had.
Yeah. What do people misunderstand most about grief and loss?
Well, one thing that I've learned, because, I have my own podcast, and I've had 140 plus guests on there now. And I just did a marathon interview yesterday, over 2 hours, with a couple sitting right across my desk, right over there. And I know these folks. They just went on a cruise with us, and I know them. But do you really know them? And so I learned a lot of things yesterday, and they had lost a son just 2 years ago.
Oh,
so
wow.
We talked about that. And the reason I said I with my podcast, I've interviewed all these people, because almost everybody I've interviewed has had some grief they've had to deal with at some point in their life. And so there is no, final way that you grieve. Everybody's way of grieving is different, and I think it sometimes comes in stages. And there's a little bit of an anger phase even for me. I think when you lose somebody in a tragedy or a momentary, either accident or something like happened to Dusty, you're angry, and it's like, why did this happen? Because, yeah, you miss that person, but you also miss the future that they would have had, and just what his life could have been. He just got married the year before. I mean, I do real estate on the side, and I helped them buy a place. They hadn't even had it 90 days, and when he passed, so. His poor wife, like I say, they'd only been married 15 months. She just was a wreck, and as you can imagine. But so it was a very traumatic event for everybody, and we all grieved in different ways. Obviously, she grieved a little differently than we grieved. But one of the things that we did is we took his ashes, and we went back to Laie, and went to Hukilau Beach, and we spread his ashes there because that was probably his favorite place in the world. He, from the first time he was there as a like 6-month-old, all the way up until he was like 30, he'd been there every couple of years and spending time at that beach and learning to boogie board and just have fun. So that was, and we took his wife with us. She'd never even been to Hawaii, so we took her with us, and I think it gave some closure. My daughter couldn't attend the celebration because she had just had a baby. The baby was sometimes when babies are first born, they'll need to stay for a few more days in the hospital, and that was the case. So it gave our daughter an opportunity to kind of participate by spreading ashes for her older brother. And so, but yeah, the grieving part, it never goes away. On the 1-month anniversary of Dusty's passing, I actually went and got a tattoo. I guess, I'm not sure if you can see it, if it'll be backwards or not, but it's right
okay,
here.
yeah.
It just said Dusty right there on my wrist.
Right.
And the reason I have that on there, a couple of reasons. When I see it, I think of him, of course, but when other people see it, they're like, hey, what does that say? Is that Dusty? And I go, yeah, let me tell you about him. So it gives me a chance to kind of talk about my son a little bit, and just, sometimes we immortalize someone who's passed on, especially someone who's passed on early or something like that. And he wasn't perfect. He was a kid. He was a young man at that point, but he was 31 years old. So I mean, but he was our son, and we loved him, and so of course we miss him. And that's why I say I'm a hopeful agnostic, because I am hopeful I'll see him again. But here's another tattoo. Remember this one?
I can't read that. Tell us what that says. Oh, there we go. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Now that dovetails with the title of your podcast, does it not?
And my book. My book says nobody knows. They just want you to think they do. So they're all kind of together. But you're right. And my website, Nobody Knows Larry Camp. So it is a nobody knows thing, and it's because of the religion part of it. That was the biggest piece, because I thought I did know. I thought I had all the answers. My religion told me I had all the answers, and then to find out, oops, I don't. That was, I can laugh at it and make light of it now a little bit, but to all of a sudden realize something you believed in for almost 60 years of your life was wrong and false, that was a big deal. And I don't think people put enough on that. But it was, and my wife, I came to this conclusion. Now, Judy still believes. Now, how's that going to go? Are we going to have like a mixed faith marriage now for the rest of our life? But just a few months after I discovered the things I discovered, she discovered them too. I kind of maybe gave her a little nudge a couple of times, but she did the research and came to her own conclusion. So that was important.
So are you saying that Judy is still Mormon or still a believer in religion?
No, she was about 3 months longer than I was, but she did her own research and she came to the same conclusion I did. So, which makes it easier, because I do have friends who are in mixed faith marriages where they've now discovered some of these things and they no longer believe, but yet their spouse still does, and that's not easy.
Yeah, that's tough. That's almost the religion equivalent of being on different political spectrums.
Oh yeah. And you can imagine that would be hard too.
Yeah, definitely it is. Did you notice that? We'll go back to Dusty for a second. The stages of grief that they talk about, that psychologists talk about, the denial and the anger and all of the various different parts of that. Did you notice yourself going through all of the different stages?
It was such a weird time for us. We had just sold our house, and then he passed, and then we moved here, and I knew one person in this whole community, and it was my cousin that I see every 8 or 10 years, And so here we are. We just lost our son. We're in a new place. We don't know anybody. We just basically left our religion, of our lifelong religion, just like a year and a half earlier. So it was a real funky time. There's no doubt about it. And
yeah.
For me, the one thing I can say is that, Matthew, having my spouse, who is my best friend, and having her there, we just really relied a lot on each other. And we have pretty much always been aligned in how we feel about our kids and what we're doing. And, our son Crosby, he's had, addiction issues. And so there's been some really tough times over the last 20 plus years with him. But we've always aligned ourselves and been on the same page. And so, Not everybody can say that. I mean, I have friends and they're like, shit, I would never say my wife's my best friend, and I'm like, well, I'm glad mine is, man, because we've been together 44 years now. So I mean, and to have when she's gone back there for a couple of weeks, yeah, it's not fun for me. Maybe for a day or two, but like, yeah, I'm glad she's coming home here next week. But
I mean, how much cold cereal can you eat?
And cans of soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. She did teach me how to make those, and I make a pretty good grilled cheese sandwich. So,
I wanted to ask you about the name of your podcast. Nobody Knows Larry Camp. Is that a desire, kind of a hidden desire of nobody getting to know you, or you wanting to be a little bit under the radar, or is it that Larry Camp doesn't know all the answers? Or tell me about the genesis of that title.
Well, that's my website. My podcast is called Nobody Knows Your Story.
Okay.
And it's simply people coming on like you did, Matthew, where you come on and you just tell your life story. And because as a people person, I love hearing people's stories. I always have. I listen to podcasts that have people come on and tell their stories, and those are, so I mean, it's only natural that's what I like too. So I started this 5 years ago, and in the podcast world, I think when I started back in 2020, there were like 700,000 podcasts. Now there's like, I think, over 8 million or something. So
wow.
Now it's a lot easier to find the kind of podcast that I like, because I like hearing the stories of other people. So podcasts like Conan O'Brien's, where he'll have a guest come on, and a lot of times they're hawking something like a new movie or a book or something, but they do talk about their lives, and that's the part I enjoy. And Dak Shepard had one that I listened to for a couple of years, but after a while, sometimes they kind of run their course and you move on to another one. But
right.
And now I've been listening to this one by a guy, Matthew Gray. So yeah, it's been kind of fun. I've been listening to his podcast.
I hope you've been enjoying those.
Yeah, they are definitely food related, but that's your deal, man. 50 Tastes of Gray. So, but yeah, I've been learning some stuff, and I tell you that. What was the other one I listened to today? I listened to the pizza one, and then I listened to another one that was more recent. But anyway, it's all right. But I am enjoying them. They're
you're talking about the podcast where we discuss pizza. That was with a guy named Scott Wiener, and he runs Scott's Pizza Tours in New York City. So anybody
Yes.
who is interested, if you go to New York, you've got to check out Scott's Tours. They're just fantastic.
I liked how he dodged the question when you said, so of the national chains, who makes a good pizza? And he never said anybody. He just like, well, I'm sure there's some good ones out there. Whatever.
Yeah, no, he's very diplomatic in that moment.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
But off the air.
And I love pizzas too, but I mean, it's so funny because we went over to some friends and they made pizza, and I'm like, this is really good pizza. Who did you get it from? You're not going to believe this. They got it from Papa Murphy's, where you buy it and you take it home and you put it in your own oven. And we've done that now. That's kind of our go-to thing now.
I see. So it's all prepped, but it's not baked yet.
Yep, exactly.
Well, that makes perfect sense that it would be that much better.
Yeah. So you take it home. You can, if you like the crust a little crispier, you can do that. If you like it a little, and you can there's different. You can get thin crust or whatever. So it gives you a little bit of the control, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So that's kind of what we do now. We have people over. If we're gonna have pizza, we just pick one up at Papa Murphy's and bring it in. So look, they got a free plug. Maybe I'll get a pizza out of it.
Wow. Hopefully I get a few subscribers out of it. Yeah. That's been the biggest challenge. I'm wondering if it's a challenge for you that, you're doing good work and you're communicating well and all that, but then the amount of subscribers or people who are willing to listen to long form is just not there in this day and age. Do you find that that's the case for you as well?
I do. I totally agree with you that the society that we live in now wants everything fast, everything quick. We just got back from Spain, and I'll tell you, I'd never been to Europe before. I think I told you this earlier, but I mean, to see the way that they do their living and their eating and their drinking, and it's so different than we do in America. First of all, one of the first things that Judy noticed when she said to me, she goes, are you noticing how thin the people are here compared to America? And I looked around like, holy crap, you are right. I mean, so there was that we noticed. Another thing we noticed, we got up in the morning at like 6:30 and we went to the front desk. We're like, hey, where can we get a coffee? They're like, well, a lot of them don't open till like 8 or 9. We're like, what? Yeah.
Wow.
So we found a place that opened at 7. So we had to wait. And then you get, you get a coffee and I'd like a large, and they bring you like this little tiny cup of coffee or whatever. Anyway, it's so different. But, yeah, I mean, the things that we noticed was just that everybody likes things quick in America, and over there they just take their time. A meal might last 2.5 hours, and we don't do that stuff here for the most part. You're, In-N-Out Burger, you're in there quick and you're out quick, and that's just how it is. So yeah, my format is never probably going to attract millions of listeners or whatever, but I do this because I enjoy it. I don't monetize my podcast. I've had people approach me, but I use music in it, and as soon as I monetized it, I wouldn't be able to use music anymore. And so I do this because it's something I enjoy, and I love actually sharing music and educating people around the world about the Hawaiian music that's out there, old school and new school. So I put a lot of new music on there too, new artists, and I realize they might have a name in Hawaii, but you get outside of Hawaii and the West Coast, and most people don't know who Sisio and Kapono are, or Kalapana, or Olamana, or even Israel Kamakabiva Oli.
Wow, good one. You just can say that off the top of your head. Good one.
I like Brother is. He's got a great story and great music, and it was a great loss when he passed. So
Yeah.
I've been trying to do a story on him. It's really been. I've got a couple of guys from his band that agreed to participate, but I've had a difficult time getting in touch with his ex-wife. Well, his wife, not ex, but he's passed on. So, but yeah,
Right.
so I don't feel like I can do that unless I have her okay and her to do it.
We need to spend the last few minutes here talking about travel and the fact that you guys love cruises.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely not a cruise person at all. Tell me what's positive about cruising.
The funny thing is I just booked another one like 3 days ago. We're going to do the Panama Canal in October. And so here's what I like about it. And I think people who like to cruise would probably kind of agree. You go to these places, you can arrange for a tour or just do your own. Sometimes, when we were in Tonga a couple of years ago, we just got off the ship. We met another couple that was standing by like a taxi stand, and we're like, hey, you guys on the ship? Yeah, we're on the ship. You guys got anything in mind? No, we want to go see something. I go, well, we want to go see this blowhole. You want to go with us, and we'll just rent a taxi and split it? Okay. I'm not using their accent. They were from England. But so the four of us just got a hold of this taxi driver, and we just had him take us all around Tonga, and it was awesome. But so sometimes we'll do that just kind of on the fly. But on this trip that we just did to Spain and Morocco, we actually took organized tours. And it was so much fun seeing things that I've never seen before. We went to Seville and saw where Columbus is buried in this big cathedral. And so back to what the cruise part of it is, you do these things, but then you come back and you got your room, and you got your bed, and you got all your clothes, and everything's there. You got your meals anytime you want them, 24/7. So the biggest challenge, and you and I have kind of joked about this, is you got to be careful, or you can get off that cruise and have gained 20 pounds. I mean,
Right.
and I'm not joking. Before I go on a cruise, if it's like, that one was 12 nights or 12 days, I will lose 5 pounds before I go on the cruise so that I can eat whatever I want. So I did that, and I still gained 10. So that was
Wow.
a 15-pound swing, So I eat and drink, because we have a drink package, and so you can have, it's not just alcohol. You can go down. They have little Starbucks on the ships, and you can go there and get a caramel macchiato or a chai tea or whatever you want. So, but it's available 24/7. So we take full advantage. So I like meeting people, So always sitting down with somebody and talking to them, and they're from some other country many times, certainly different states, and it's fun to just get to know people. We met a couple from the Big Island of Hawaii, and we still talk with them. We met them when we were on in New Zealand and Tonga and Fiji and Samoas, and when we would eat dinner with them each night, and he played senior softball. What are the odds, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So those are
I've
some
got
of the fun things that we like about cruising, and we go to just different places. Like I say, we're going to go to and do the Panama Canal because Judy's parents did that, and they talked about how cool it was. So we'll do that, and we'll have some stops along the way in Guatemala and Costa Rica and Mexico and Aruba and just different places, It's fun.
It's great because the people who love cruises really love it. I have friends who go on the 6-month cruises,
Oh,
and
wow.
they just go. They go for half a year, and it just blows my mind that they could do that. But I've also heard that some people live on cruise ships, and that all things considered, you could live for a more affordable amount of money on a cruise ship than having to pay the mortgage on a nice big home somewhere.
Well, I've heard of that too, because if you think about it, you've got maid service every day, because you have a cabin steward. They'll come in and make your bed, clean your room, do everything for you. You've got food whenever you want it. You'd have to probably have a little bit more self-control than I have when I'm just there visiting for 8 or 10 days or whatever it is. But you've got, laundry facilities or somebody to do your laundry. So you're seeing different sites. You'd have to probably organize it in such a way that you're not doing the same itinerary over and over again. So you want to get on something that kind of goes around and does different things. But I've heard of people doing that. I know even one young guy that's doing that because he can work from home. And so as long as he's got his laptop and he has good Wi-Fi, it doesn't matter where he is. And this guy was like in his 30s, and he was living in San Diego. And he said, I did the math. I can live on a cruise ship and go see all these other sites for less than I'm paying here, because I won't need a car. I don't need car insurance. He went through the whole list, and he says, so by the time I factor all that in, I can live on a cruise ship. Now, he goes, I probably won't do it for more than a year or two, but I'm going to give it a go. And I thought, well, that's super interesting. And I guess you could flip it the other way too and say, well, I'm retired, so I could do this too. But some people, because a lot of people that get retired, they go live in these retirement homes, right?
Right.
So if you don't want to go that route, I guess you could try a cruise ship. To me, that would seem like it would be more fun, but there's lots of activities. There's always something to do. I told you about the silent disco. That's one of our favorite go-tos. We love that.
Now, I don't know if people know what a silent disco is. Tell us what that is.
Yeah, so this is crazy. The first time we looked at it, every day they give you a list of things that are going on the ship, and we're like, silent disco? What the hell's that? And so it was like at 11 o'clock at night. And so we went up to this, it's a room where they have a lot of contests and different things. They have karaoke up there and different things. So we went up to this room, and we go up there, and we walk in, and you can't hear anything. And we turn the corner, and there's all these people, 150 people dancing, and you can hear nothing except feet shuffling around. And every once in a while you hear somebody saying, play that funky music, or whatever, but they're just singing it themselves, right? So what it is you look at the people, and they have a set of headphones on, like I have right now.
It's in their ear.
Yeah, they have headphones just like this. And there's colors. One of them's green. I look over here, this guy's got a blue one. Somebody's got a red one. And so we learned, and as you walk in, they hand you the headphones, and you put them on. The guy says, just flip this button right here when you want to switch between the songs, and there's always 3 different songs playing. And so, yeah, you're just out there dancing. And the headphones, the music quality is great. It's loud. You can turn the volume up if you want, how loud you want it. And you're just out there dancing. But, again, nobody else can hear it except the guys that have the headsets on.
That's a very cool way to do things. So it's all wireless headphones that they hand out to the passengers, and you guys just all dance together. You're not listening to the same thing.
There's always a bar there, so we have plenty of, what do we call that? Liquid courage for those that might need to get out of the dance floor.
Right. Adult lubrication, and
exactly.
Not the kind you might be thinking about. Wow.
Yeah, but it's a lot
that's
of fun.
very interesting. Yeah.
We've done that on the last 3 cruises we've been on. And this last one had it 3 different nights. So we go up there, and we had 10 friends with us. So there was 12 of us all together on that cruise. And those are fun. Judy and I have done a lot of cruises by ourselves, but they're different. They're different when it's just 2 of you, or if there's, we've had as many as 24. So yeah, they're a lot of fun.
So given the fact that you've done so much travel, where would you say your favorite city or country has been so far?
Well, if you would have asked me this a month ago, I would have said probably New Zealand, Auckland, Now I would probably say Spain, because I just fell in love with Spain. I thought it was just awesome. There was a couple of things I didn't really get. Like, for example, we're going down the highway or freeway, and it was in better shape than ours here in America. Mm-hmm. And it was so nice and clean. But then every building was tagged. And I was like, I didn't get it. It was like, everything's so clean and orderly, but then every building where any possible space has been tagged, and And most of the tagging was like almost professional. It's almost like if somebody's tagging, they must allow them to do it because a lot of it took a lot of time. I don't know how they would have done it without somebody seeing them. So that I didn't understand, but I really liked Spain a lot. I liked the people. I liked the food, and that's the other thing about cruises. I'll say, Matthew, is that when we're on the cruises, I try food I would never eat here. I mean, like escargot and things like that. So I mean, I typically don't have that when I'm getting my frosted mini wheats. So
Right. Oh, that sounds fantastic.
but yeah, I did like Spain.
Did you get to Barcelona?
Oh yeah, we spent 3 days there. So we went to the Sagrada Familia. We even took a bus and we went up to Montserrat and did that. And there's that Michael's Cross or whatever up on the hill. Judy and I walked up to the St. Michael's Cross, but just fascinating. We happened to be at Montserrat on a Sunday, and it was a holiday, and so they did this reenactment where they had like these Roman soldiers walking through, and this, anyway, it was just very, very cool. I mean, I'm a picture taker, and I took a lot of pictures.
Oh, I'm so glad you got to Spain because Barcelona is definitely one of our favorites.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so we did Barcelona, and then, so we were there. We got there a couple of days before the cruise. One afternoon we took a bullet train and went to France and had lunch.
I know. Isn't that cool? In just a couple hours, you can be in another country completely.
It's so different for us because we haven't been big travelers other than the Caribbean and, Mexico and stuff like that. We've done that a lot of times, but we've never really been to Europe. And, I've been, South Pacific stuff, like I said, New Zealand and Tonga and stuff. But yeah, that would have been I liked New Zealand a lot too. I really did. And we're going back there again. So, because we didn't have enough time there. And that's the one thing about cruises, if I'm going to say what's a knock sometimes, is you will have a port or a stop, and, you can get off the ship at like 8 in the morning, but you got to be back on by 5. And so sometimes you just don't get enough time in that particular city or area. So that would be, I guess, a knock. But what it does is it gives you enough of a taste to say, oh, I want to come back. And that's how it was for us when we went to New Zealand.
It's sort of like an appetizer in a way. You get to see a city for a little while and you go, oh, okay, we can make a special trip to here another time.
Yes, exactly. And when my kids, when they were stationed in Long Beach, we would go down there and we would just jump on a ship and do 3 or 4 days, just so, because they lived in like a 2-bedroom little apartment and they didn't have enough room for us to stay very long, so we'd stay one night. But well, since we're here, we might as well get on this cruise. So we've been to Ensenada like 5 times, and man, I wouldn't even get off the ship anymore because it was like there's just nothing there that interested me. So sorry if you're from Ensenada and you're listening to this. It's not a knock to you. I just was there plenty of times.
I forgot to tell you, like half my audience is from Ensenada. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So Larry, thank you so much for coming on to 50 Tastes of Great today. If people want to listen to you, watch your stuff, where can they go?
If they want to listen to the podcast, it's just Nobody Knows Your Story. Simple as that. And, it's just all the normal places where you would listen to a podcast. And you can even see it on my website, which is, again, nobodyknowslarrycamp.com. And I have my podcast episodes there. You could listen to them from there. But, my book is Nobody Knows. They just want you to think they do. And that's mostly just a memoir, although you will get my take on life. I cover religion and politics and everything else, but it's just what I think.
Well, that's fantastic, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on, and continued success to you.
Thanks, Matthew. It's a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying your podcast too. So listeners out there, hey, continue listening if you haven't heard all of his episodes, because the ones I've heard are pretty entertaining.
It's very psychosexual and food related. It's like all confused.
That's what makes it great.
Right. So, Larry, let's just say aloha for now, and we'll see you down the road.
All right, buddy. Aloha.
Thank you, man. That was great.
Yeah, it's fun. I enjoy it. I really do. I mean, again, it's like I said, if you're a people person, this is just fun stuff.
Yeah. When you're doing your podcasts, are you doing shorts also to try to get that other side of the audience that doesn't have the time or the wherewithal to listen to long form?
I do not. But if I was doing it more seriously, like if I was going to try and monetize or, gain followers or whatever, then I would. And I'd put it on YouTube, and I would probably do the video, and I would do all that. But again, I decided early on I wanted to use music, and I knew that that's a big no-no. And I've never had anybody ever say a word to me, but about every fourth or fifth episode, I'll say, hey, today we just, like yesterday was, I used it actually. I said, so, hey, we just heard John Cruz sing, island music or whatever. And then in the middle of the podcast, we're going to listen to Olamana or whatever it was. And then I'll just say, hey, once again, guys, if you enjoy the music you hear on the podcast, please support these entertainers and musicians by purchasing their music. I said, these guys in Hawaii, a lot of them are working 3 jobs just to try to survive. And, so I use their music because I want to spread their music throughout the world. So, if you were a musician and you heard me saying that, why would you knock that, right? So,
Exactly.
Nobody has. Yeah, nobody has. And when I had Henry Capono on, I said, dude, do you care if I use like 5 of your songs? No, that's great. So, yeah, I don't care.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're digging it. So that's great.
I am. But that's why I don't. I think if I was more serious about it, I definitely would, because like you said, the probably the most successful format are podcasts that probably no more than 20, 25 minutes at max,
Yeah.
And a lot of times
people
mine will go over an hour, a lot of times. So.
Right. Yeah. And mine typically are over an hour also. But of course, it's good to not be motivated to monetize and just, my goal is just to touch as many people as I can. And
yeah. You never know. Maybe some of the people that you have some other things too that possibly through them hearing your podcast, they'll then go look at those other aspects too. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know some people that do it that way. They use the podcast as a way to kind of introduce other aspects of their life to people out there. So, yeah, mine's all pretty much word of mouth. I don't do any kind of marketing or anything.
Same here.
I don't have any swag.
Same here.
Yeah. Right,
we'll have a great rest of 2025, my friend. I hope everything works out really well for you.
I'm going to do it. And I don't even know if I told you this, but maybe I did in our email, but we got the Merry Monarch tickets, so we're coming in April.
You did mention that. Good for you. You scored.
Yeah. I just talked to a buddy of mine who I actually just sold him a house. He has a home in Waimea on the Big Island, and I just sold him a house a mile down the road from me. And he goes, oh, I'm so jealous. He goes, we tried to get those a couple times, and we lived there, and we couldn't get them. So, yeah, we feel pretty fortunate that we got them.
Ooh, good connections, apparently.
Yeah. So we'll be there in April for a week on the Big Island, but I usually go to my condo that I have that I take care of in Kihei about every maybe 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I would go more often or stay longer. I stay a couple of weeks usually, but it gives me a chance to see all my friends, and we've done everything, and we're older now. So I used to boogie board like crazy. I loved it.
Yeah.
And I just don't do that anymore. Some things about being 68 truly are. We look at ourselves and we think, oh, I'm still can do this, but yeah, maybe not so much. If I get rolled on a wave now, I feel it for like 5 days. So
right. Yeah. Well, don't
right,
let
Matthew,
that happen.
Appreciate it, buddy.
We'll catch up soon, my friend.
Yeah, and if you're ever over this way, we got over in Hawaii, we call them ohanas, right? But over here, we call them casitas. But I got a casita out there you'd be welcome to use, man.
Oh,
it's small, but it's got a bed, a TV, a bathroom, so, you'd be welcome to use it if you're ever here and just want to do some hiking. we are like less than an hour from Zion National Park, which is just phenomenal. They had 5 million visitors last year.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that offer. If I am there, I will definitely pounce in on you.
All right, buddy. Take care, man.
Take care.
All right.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.